So today, this building behind me, the City Hall, houses the Mayor's Parlour and the Finlayson National Art Gallery. And this is where our focus lies today, on Gibraltar's art and its art history. We're going to be featuring some of those treasures that form part of the Gibraltar Government Art Collection. We'll be joined by some interesting guests as well, who have their own fascinating story to tell too. Okay, Gino, so we're coming to Leni Mifsud's room, and she's the only female artist in the gallery. Obviously, it wasn't as commonplace in those days to have women dedicate themselves to art, so particularly brave maybe of Leni to follow her passion and go against the will of her family even then, to go and study to the Bellas Artes.
Oh yeah, no, I know the family. It's well, a bit like Baccarissa, la burguesia, the bourgeoisie, you know, so upper middle class. So that you have, as you say, a woman wanting to do this and having that passion and drive to live off or try and live off painting speaks volumes, and to get the results that she did over so many years and that she became, because she was a very beloved. I mean, she's one of the ones. Baccarissa was in Seville, but Leni, Asaguri, Mania and Mario have been living with us and have been part of the social fabric for years and years and years. Like, it's a bit like, obviously much more now. I mean, you know me, and you know Paul, and you know Christian, and there is that familiarity, but at the same time, Mario is the bridge between the previous generation and us. And obviously Leni, for example, Leni taught Basheva, Jane and Wheeler, who are also part of, and very important part of, the social fabric of art, the fine arts in Gibraltar. For example, I'm watching that one of the boats, and the strokes, the yellow strokes at the back, very colorful, the sense of rhythm. This is something that I like about Leni, the sense of rhythm. I don't know if you met her. I met her a couple of times because she was kind of part of the family. She was always like como un pajarito, no? There was always that nervousness and around a beakiness about her. So there's, I find that very touching when I see her rhythm and her energy being seen graphically, because it's a bit like when you draw, those strokes are a bit like the cardiogram that you see, like boom, 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 boom.
How you are choosing to express yourself,
how you see, so literally, I mean, if I can get closer, all this stuff around here and there, and especially around there,
and the reflection, the sea,
around here, all this is action that has to be done and accomplished and brought together in a statement, and that creates the energy. And one has to say, especially in that one, the electricity that is part of the painting.
I think one thing we really have to talk about, if we just like look around the gallery, is there's so much color, isn't there? And vibrancy and light, and a lot of landscapes and scenes.
And a lot of buildings, buildings. And this is still part of Gibraltar's art subject matter, that a lot of artists paint buildings. Mario, especially with his whole series of the rooftops. Lorraine Bohaja, for example, paints a lot of Gibraltar. Leslie Gadusso paints a lot of Gibraltar. I don't, for whatever reason, I don't, at least for the moment. No, but you know, the sense of the urban spaces are important. And
although perhaps in that particular wall, very few Gibraltar scenes.
Because again, she moved around. She went a lot. Well, she was in Madeira. She went to Madrid. Apparently, she also Portugal and the north of Spain. So also a woman that moved around a lot and was obviously very interested in her surroundings and how that corresponds with her personality and what she did with her personality.
And I think we've got to touch upon the Theatre Royal scene. That is definitely
Oh,
a
yeah,
Gibraltar
yeah,
one,
yeah,
and one
yeah.
that's that obviously captures now a moment in our history which is no longer there.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because again we have all this familiarity with all these structures as well, but how maybe in 100 years' time people will perceive how we are responding to our environment and our social environment, for example, that does not exist anymore. It will only be in the memory. How does that fit into the mindset of what Gibraltar will be, say, in 150 years' time? Because that's the value of culture. We create things that stay. We create, above everything, a painting or a sculpture, or even more, architecture is an object.
Yeah.
And if you take care of it, this will be there for hundreds of years, like we see in the Prado, in the Uffizi, or the National Gallery. And this is the link of humanity throughout the ages. And Leni is very much of her generation. And what I find very touching is the palette that we have over there.
That's right, it was a recent acquisition, and we are told that that was a palette that she used to paint sunsets primarily, which were paintings that she gifted to family. So this was actually donated to us by a family, and that was the story that we were told to accompany it.
Because and it's quite interesting to see the colors that are there, because that's a reproduction of you know, there is a dialogue between, okay, that was the surface, that's where it's a bit like the el horno, digamos, the oven, that's where it was cooking, and then
the process, isn't it? It
process,
sheds light on the process and perhaps
yeah.
how she liked to mix her colors, and even the thickness of shows the energy.
And also what's important is what we have there is chaos. Basically, it's chaos. It could be a modern abstract.
Yeah.
If you put it in its context, out of context, it could be an abstract. But then and I'm going to borrow a phrase from Gombrich, from that chaos there is a sense of order. And this is something that, you know, now that I'm looking at the collection of the government, it's a word that comes to my mind seeing all the work. Maybe it's our fortress mentality, that this sense of order is very prevalent, even though we do mad things and here and there. But ultimately there is a certain order, and maybe that's because some people come into the gallery and they look around the fine arts and they said, well, is there a Gibraltarian school of painting? I said, well, no, I don't think so, but maybe there is, and we're not realizing it because we're too close to the thing itself.
There's an underlying current,
but there is an underlying
field.
difference between what they do in, for example, in La Linea, and you see it, what they do in La Linea, which is just along the way, or Algeciras or Cadiz, is very different to what is being done here, because precisely we're a very different mixture. The colors that we mix in our palette are very different to the colors, the social colors that they mix in La Linea, because we have here the Indian community, the Jewish community, Roman Catholic, all that is the colors, and with the finance and all
shape
that.
And make us our history, our heritage, the
colors in our
currents.
palette are very, very different. So maybe that's why, and that's why it's very exciting to see who moves where, and the aesthetic options that people are taking up, because it's all part of that growth process, and becoming who we are, and the sense of identity is crucial for us as a community and as an artistic power.
So we know that Leni actually lived of her art, and one of the ways in which she did that was by making postcards. And in fact, she actually created the original blocks, so that would have involved the carving and working with other materials. And you know, we've got some great examples here.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's what we call locally humanita.
Yeah, desde luego.
No tenía miedo de nada. Y claro,
Totally.
I mean, looking back, maybe at that time there weren't a lot of postcards, but for example, when the Royal Navy used to come in full force, there was a lot of market for buying the sort of memento of the visit that people could take with them.
Some really intricate designs, if we see that one up to the entrance to Main Street and the gates there.
No,
really beautiful and detailed.
I'm sure there must be some around in people's, you know, people who've been in the Navy or in the Army who actually bought this. And of course it makes it more personal than a normal postcard.
Yes.
You see the object from where it came from, and then for the printing of the image, so it makes it more, in a way, more fun than a simple normal photograph. From what I can see, it's very much what they call wet on wet, and layers of moving from the dark all the way up to the lighter color. So it's a bit like a cake, what you do.
Yes.
You know, like you have the different layers of chocolate, strawberry, vanilla, you know, up so that the white or the lighter colors are up top. So you usually, or at least I usually start from a raw amber and then build up the colors, and I use wet on wet, and it goes very well with me. I sometimes don't have the patience because it's a bit like cooking, you know. You have, but then there are shortcuts, and then if it suits you and it holds, that's important, because a lot of contemporary art, you know, these experiments, and within 3 or 4 years the painting is collapsing, and if somebody's bought one of those and spent a lot of money, you don't want it to collapse in your living room. So that has to be taken into account, and that's something that we monitor closely in the collection, and it's important that because it's a bit like a body, and thus you go to the health center, what's the state of the body, how are the muscles, you know, the quality of the skin, you know, the general feel of the body, to see if any reparations have to be, or restoration has to be done, because time is irrevocable. So there is that element of decay. But we try, obviously, temperature fine, light fine, to conserve these statements from past ages as much as we can.
And Gina, just to wrap up, really, I mean, what type of impact would you say has Leni's art and perhaps her teaching to those who she, you know, directly tutored, has had on the work that we see being produced nowadays by contemporary artists?
No, I think the influence is there, and people, you know, come in and look and glean. And what's important also is that we establish this dialogue with people that are, or artists that are local, you know, that they come from the schools, obviously, to come to this, and of course it's open, it's free, so just come in and have a look and sit and contemplate and take pleasure in what you are seeing, and learn maybe things. Again, I go back to the cooking idea, you know, la receta, and what you do, maybe a bit of tweaking here and there, and make something different, and then the chain continues.
Thanks very much.